Have you ever looked at an app on your phone and just wondered, how did this get here? How did it go from just an idea to this thing I use every day? Well, it's definitely not magic. It's actually a super structured process, a roadmap that every developer follows called the software development lifecycle. And today we're going to break it all down. So that's the big question, right? How do you take that little spark of an idea and turn it into something real, something powerful that actually works and that people can rely on? The answer is following a very specific step-by-step journey, and that's exactly what we're going to walk through right now. All right, so here's our game plan. We've got 6 key phases to cover. We're going to start at the very beginning with planning and design, then dive into the actual building and testing, and we'll finish up with deployment and the all-important long-term maintenance. Let's get a bird's eye view first. And here it is, the whole journey laid out. Think of these 6 steps like you're baking a cake. Each step builds on the last one. If you rush the planning or skip the testing, you're going to have a mess on your hands later. Getting each one of these right is absolutely critical. So let's jump into phase 1. Okay, we're at the very foundation of the whole project, the planning phase. You wouldn't build a house without a solid foundation, right? Same thing here. You just can't build good software without a rock-solid plan. This is where it all kicks off. So what does planning really mean in this context? It's all about defining the what. What are we building? The team gets together with everyone involved, the clients, the future users, the managers, and they figure out every single requirement. We're talking everything from users need to log in with their Google account to the main call to action button has to be this exact shade of blue. All of this goes into a document that basically becomes the project's Bible. So now that we know what we're building, we've got to figure out how we're going to build it. That brings us to phase 2, analysis and design. If planning was deciding to build a house, this is the part where we actually draw up the architectural blueprints. This is where the idea starts to get really technical and concrete. The team takes that huge list of requirements we just made and figures out, okay, how do we actually pull this off with the technology we have? They create a system design document that maps out the software's architecture, how the database will work, what the user interface will look like. Basically, it's the detailed instruction manual for the developers. All right, now for the fun part. This is what most people think of when they hear software development. It's the implementation phase. The plans are done, the blueprints are ready, it is finally time to write some code. You might hear it called construction or coding or implementation. It's all the same thing. This is where developers roll up their sleeves, take those super detailed design documents, and start translating them into actual working code using languages like Python or JavaScript. They build out every feature, every button, every little component piece by piece until a real piece of software starts to emerge. The code's been written, the features are technically built, so we're ready to launch, right? Nope, not even close. Now comes probably one of the most important stages for making sure we have a quality product. Testing and debugging. And this really gets to the heart of it. You can't just test one little piece by itself and call it a day. It's kind of like building a car. You need to make sure the engine works with the transmission and the brakes work with the wheels. You have to bring all those different parts together and test the whole system to make sure it runs smoothly as one complete unit. And at the end of the day, it really just comes down to this. It's time to hunt for bugs. The quality assurance team, or QA team, their entire job is to try and break the software. Seriously, they push it to its limits, they do things a normal user wouldn't, all to find any errors or bugs so the developers can squash them before anyone else ever sees them. Okay, deep breaths. The software has been planned, designed, built, and tested within an inch of its life. Now comes the moment of truth. It's time for deployment, the official launch where our creation finally gets to meet the world. So deployment is basically the process of getting the software out there for people to actually use. That might mean publishing it to the Apple App Store, or pushing the code live to a website, or maybe installing it on a company's private servers. Whatever the method, the goal is the same. The software is finally in the hands of the people it was built for. So it's launched. Woohoo! Project's over. We can all go home, right? Not so fast. The journey is far from over. You have to think of software as a living, breathing thing. And that means it needs ongoing care in our final phase, maintenance. This is the long game. Look, no software is ever going to be 100% perfect, and the digital world it lives in is constantly changing. Maintenance is all about fixing those little bugs that users find after the launch, updating the software to work on new iPhones or Android versions, and maybe even adding new features down the line to keep it useful and running smoothly. And there you have it, the whole thing, start to finish.
We went from planning the initial idea to creating the blueprint and design to the actual coding and implementation, then the bug hunting and testing, the big launch and deployment, and finally, the ongoing care and maintenance. That is the complete software development journey.
So that leaves us with something to think about. We've seen how every single phase is connected and builds on the last one. But if you had to pick, which step do you think is the absolute most critical to get right? Is it the initial plan, the detailed design, or maybe the rigorous testing? It's an interesting question now that you know the full roadmap. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.